I'm on 2,700 acres of some of the most glorious and well-maintained grazing property that you're ever likely to see. Tamimble, home to Leo and Melissa Collins, is near Churrill in central New South Wales, and they have overcome some significant pest problems in order to look after this amazing paddock. Let's go and meet Leo and find out more about this story. So Leo, this grass here that we've got with at the moment, this is a temporary resident of this paddock, mate. You're going to spray it out soon, and you're going to sow some tropical species?
Yeah, it's just too much barley grass here at the moment to have a good crop. So we're going to we'll graze it, and then we'll spray it out, and come November there'll be tropical grasses sown in here.
And what species of tropical grasses are you looking for at the moment?
Primarily it'll be Premier Digit. It's a great cattle feed and can be utilised by sheep as well. But we may also add a couple mixes, a couple more pasture species, as well as Ceradella, Bicerella.
Okay, so you got a nice sort of multi-species mix into the pasture.
Yeah, as well we put clover, and that'll fix the nitrogen for the tropical grasses to benefit from.
So that'll lower your dependency on those synthetic fertilisers.
Absolutely.
And lower your input costs.
Absolutely. Once we get the clovers really established, like we have in other paddocks nearby, once we get those established, we don't need such reliance on the synthetic fertilisers.
Now, it's really important, if you're going to be investing this amount of money into your grass, that you don't have ferals coming in across the boundary and cleaning it up, isn't there?
Oh, 100%. And for us, it was about virtually protecting our boundary before we even worried about sowing anything once we'd taken over. We had to put in a water system as well due to the dry weather. But we knew there was no good of growing good pastures to feed the feral animals that frequent the area. So we had to put in boundary fences and some internal hot fences to contain those feral animals. And we've been very successful at that.
Well, I'd love to go and have a look at some of the water infrastructure that you put in and talk to you a little bit about that.
Yes.
But I'd also like to talk to you about a couple of approaches that you've taken with your fencing to look after your paddocks before you sow them.
Yes.
The first approach has been to replace the fence with new technology, and the second approach, when you've had a reasonable fence, is to add to the reasonable fence with new technology to make both systems work. And you're getting good success, aren't you? Oh,
it's just chalk and cheese. You know, we spent about 3 years, we trapped about 1,000 pigs, shot, poisoned, removed them.
You had waves of pigs.
We had waves of pigs, and we've also had deer. I think the helicopter shot 37 deer in the area in last year, and some also this year. And we just couldn't go on trapping, shooting, poisoning pigs, so we had to remove them, and that's why we looked at the putting the electric fences in, and to this end we've just been so happy with it. We've used the 80 centimetre standoffs very successfully, as well as the 130 centimetre iPost.
Well, let's go and have a look at those two options and talk about how you're powering them up, and what the traps are for newbies, what you need to be really careful of when you're setting up one of these fences if you want it to work.
Yep, start with a plan, So
mate, this is option number one. If the fence is not serviceable, bulldoze it out, get rid of it and replace it with a brand new one, but you haven't gone and just put in a 5-barb fence again. You've actually put in a pretty high-tech exclusion fence here. Tell me a little bit about the dimensions of this fence.
It's, Tim, it's 150 centimetres high.
Right.
We're using the 130 centimetre iPost.
Yep.
We're using the high-conductive aluminium wire.
Now, high-conductive wire is important because it gets the power around the fence like a big pipe with water.
That's exactly right, exactly right. If you want to move power, we believe you move it in this high-conductive wire, and you'll get more power than all the power you need.
And you've got a very powerful energiser. You went with a bigger energiser than some people think you need, but that's really important with a fence like this because you want that power on the fence, don't you?
Well, we wanted to keep growing the system, so we didn't want to start with a small energiser and then have to upgrade it. We just wanted to start with the 12,000i.
Right.
Which
it's like the flagship energiser, isn't it?
It sure is, and It's Gallagher's biggest energiser. That's the one we're using. We also attach that to 12 super earth kits for good earthing.
Now that's something that's really important, isn't it? A lot of people will buy themselves a really big energiser, they'll spend money on their aluminium wire, they'll spend money in getting the fence out, and then they'll cheat and they'll think, oh, I just need to put in one earth because I'll be right. No. But it's like choking the whole system, isn't it?
You have to build it right. You have to build it right. If you're going to go to all the effort and all the expense of putting all this fence up, you have to have a good earth system. You have to have, you know, it just has to be done with the joining clamps, the double insulated cabling. If you build it right, build it once.
Well, speaking of good builds, let's have a look at this, mate. This is really impressive stuff. You've not only used your high capacity lead out wire for under your gate, but you're using it for all of your connections, and every single connection is joint clamp. That's really important as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to get the most power through your fence, you need to join it as many times as possible, and to make it just work really efficiently. You don't want to be holding the power up. You want the power to get through as quickly and as easily as it possibly can.
Now, all your power is down low. You've got a 1500 high fence, but your top two wires are not even charged. You've got your 4 energised wires down quite low. That's because you've got a problem with pigs and dogs, haven't you?
Pigs and dogs. I've never seen a pig jump a fence yet, but they will push through. They used to push through this fence, no more. So we just needed all our power at the bottom.
So unless pigs start flying, you're not going to be energising that top wire?
No, and we would never energise the top one anyway due to the threat of lightning, but yep. We could energise one more, but we don't. This fence has been here for over 12 months, and it's just blocking basically everything. So
even deer,
with the deer are not attempting. I think initially animals will try to push through the fence.
Yes,
they don't just run up and jump over.
Yep.
I think they will try and push through, and once they get educated, they seem to keep right away from it.
And people ignorantly think that animals don't learn. They sure do, don't they?
They certainly do, the hard way, some of them.
So fence number 2, mate, very different approach. We've got quite a serviceable older fence here, but ferals were getting under it, over it, through it. You were having a big problem with pigs and roos down here, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. So,
tell me about what you've done here, mate. You've got a leaning offset on it.
Well, we knew the fence was pretty good as it was, but we wanted to make it better and really stop the pigs. So we spoke to Gallagher. We talked about these 80 centimetre iPosts.
Yep.
And a little bit of a plan came together, and we've built 5 or 6 kilometres like this now.
Now you've got 5 wires in these leaning offsets. A lot of people have 4. You've got 5.
Yep.
And critically, one of them is still your aluminium coated high capacity wire. So you haven't cut corners on this either, have you?
No.
You might be using an old fence, but you're not cutting corners.
No. We wanted to get the power right to the end, and we wanted to have it proper hot. Because at this point, we're about 12 kilometres from our energiser.
12 k's that way?
12 kilometres around the boundary and back to the house. We're about 12 kilometres away. So we needed to have plenty of power here for it to be effective. Again, the price of a bit of wire is not that expensive compared to going and setting up traps, pulling dead pigs out of traps.
Helicopters.
Trying to, trap wild dogs. It's just the best way to spend money is put wire in the fence and put electricity into it.
Now it's counterintuitive because the feral pests are there, your good pasture is over there, and your leaning offset is pointing in your fence, but it's still working.
It works because I think they come to it, they touch it, and they go home. We don't, and if anything that does get in here,
so they put their little nose through the existing fence like they were in the past.
Yes.
And they get a sense of something hot and they back out again.
And they taste it and they don't like it. And they move, and they just don't come through. As you can see, we haven't had much rain for 6 months until 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
We've had 5 inches of rain. We've now got
starting to come back.
Good green feed coming. Whereas, if we didn't have this fence, we would just be, servicing, 200 or 300 kangaroos, pigs, possibly deer, anything feral that's looking for a feed.
And the proof's in the pudding, mate. You've got lovely lush grass on this side of the fence. and you've got scrub on that side of the fence, but you've got no pigs on this side of the fence. You've got plenty of pigs on that side of the fence.
That's the way we like to keep it.
Now, ideally, if you owned both sides of this fence and your problem was over there, you would put the leaning offset on that side. But there's actually, you can see track marks up this fence where the ferals are actually walking the fence and staying off it simply because of this internal leaning offset.
Oh, they've been coming through here for so long. You know, it was only going to be a proper hot fence that stopped them.
Yeah.
So we needed to...
Proper hot.
Proper hot. We needed to make it hot, and we need to make it proper hot. And it's worked because, you know, we come here on a regular basis. You know, there's an odd little wallaby or whatever will dash through, but, you know, we don't mind having a few around, but we just don't want hundreds of them. So it's definitely, it's just working a trick.
And there's no specific new skills that you've got to learn. I mean, it's just flick on a few clips and tie your post against the old fence. But the main thing is follow the actual instructions, which is the one thing I'm bad at doing. Get your earth right, get all your joints clamped, use high capacity lead out wire, use high capacity aluminium wire in your fence, and do the job once.
Don't cut corners, but we have learnt one thing in recent times. Where we're putting our droppers at the post, if we do have any incursions, we're finding they're coming through the middle of the panel.
Right.
So if when we construct, we've got another 2 kilometres of this to build this year.
Yep.
We'll be putting our droppers in the middle of the post and using a Gallagher clip to clip them onto the wire, and that will provide extra visual and hopefully a more effective deterrent.
So you don't need to clip these leaning offsets to the existing steel post. With the clips that come with them, you can actually put them in the middle of the panel, and you're saying that visually you'll have double the posts.
Well, originally we were told just tie those to your post.
Seems logical.
And which we thought was a great idea, so we did that. But now we're thinking and being told that if we put those in the middle of the post, we're actually building, you know, 50% more visual, and it only makes sense to do that. So we may even try a section with the droppers in the middle.
Just to try it out first, do a trial.
Yes, do a trial, but I'm sure it'll work and it'll still be effective. Provided the wires, the strainers, you need to have really good end assemblies.
Yep.
If you can't keep your wires tight, you know, you'll have problems with shorting. But we just rarely ever have a short in these fences. Good stay assemblies, strong wire, and very strained up.
And plenty of power.
Plenty of power, you've got to have it hot.
Now, as well as your fencing, you're getting your water right, because fences and water are the two big things here, mate. Now, we've got an interesting project behind us that you're about to get into. You're actively fencing off your water at the moment, your dams, in an attempt to get your water quality high. And you're pumping water uphill to tanks, which are then feeding a network of troughs. What's the point of doing that, and is it worth doing?
Oh, absolutely, Tim. So what our plan is, we want to fence these dams off to stop the animals getting in them, mucking them up, making ruining the water quality.
Yep.
We want to fence them off and then use solar pumps to extract the water out of the dams and pump it to the top of the hill to a tank that will then reticulate back to our trough system.
Now, you don't feed off to any troughs on the way up the hill to the tank. You only feed off to troughs using the gravity line on the way back from the tank. It's a header tank.
Absolutely. Like, the worst thing I think anyone can do in water is to use their upline as a feed line as well. Because if you have a trough that leaks, if you have a float that lets go,
pump stays on,
you lose all your water. So we actually only reticulate back through a designated line.
What size header tank do you need to drive what size trough? Is there a rule around that?
Well, the bigger the better. We use clear water tanks, 110,000 litres. Mm-hmm. We've installed 2 of those, and just to give us the capacity, you'll never have too much water in this country. And the dams behind us, like this dam behind us here, we have photos of draft horses digging this dam back in the probably 1930s or 1940s. That it's been enlarged a couple of times since. One of the things my father-in-law did was build dams, and when he thought they were deep enough, he usually doubled the depth. And
that's been critical for you, hasn't it, getting through this dry patch? Because it has been really dry since when?
Well, November 22, we had floods, and since then we've had very little runoff rain.
So nearly 4 years without any runoff rain. Now explain to the viewers what runoff rain means as opposed to normal rain.
Well, the runoff rain fills our dams, and if we don't have any runoff rain, we don't have water in our dams. So one of the reasons that this little dam here, basically the water it caught the other day was off the banks,
Yep.
but we still haven't had substantial runoff rain. You really need a proper flood to get substantial runoff rain.
So it's critical if you are going to build a dam that you do what your father-in-law did, and that is go deep. Too many people do shallow dams, and that's just an evaporation pond, isn't it?
He called those wet season water holes, so they only had water in them in a wet season, and in the dry season, dry times when you really needed them, they were dry. So he never ever skimped on building proper dams.
Isn't it true we always stand on the shoulders of giants? You've got water in your dams now because of the common sense of your father-in-law when he was digging those dams and enlarging them. And now you're taking that asset that's been gifted to you from the last generation and improving on it by taking cattle and sheep out of the dams, pumping the water up the hill and using clean water in troughs. Now that's going to get you better daily weight gain, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You can't beat fresh, clean water. And, you always see cattle, they always drink close to the float valve where the fresh water's coming in. So, they do drink out of dams, but it's nothing compares to good fresh water.
So mate, at the end of the day, it's all about the quality either of the pasture or the water that you put into your livestock. We've got some nice clean water here now. Going to get good daily weight gains. You're investing in the future and you're investing in production, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Like nobody likes drinking dirty water. You or I wouldn't. So why should we let our livestock drink water? So we put in the small 8-foot sheep cattle clear water troughs.
Yep.
We don't like big long troughs because the water gets hot in them and they tend to grow a lot of algae. So we put in the concrete 8-foot troughs, easy to clean, and the water stays cool and clear.
Cleaner troughs in concrete, better management of temperature, clean water to begin with, good growth in your livestock, can't go wrong. So guys, send this video to someone you know who needs to get their water drinkable and their fences fixed so that they can start growing good pasture and get healthy returns from their farming business. And if you like this kind of video, support the channel by hitting that subscribe button, giving it a thumbs up, because there's something new every week. Mate, thank you so much. I really appreciate the wisdom.
You're welcome, Tim, and I hope people learn something from this.